What's up, y'all? What is up? What's up? We are going to have an important conversation this morning. For those of you tuning in for the first time, my name is Fitz. I am the host of the Let's Argue podcast. This is my channel. Make sure you hit that like button as you come in, subscribe, show support for the channel. Early morning. But I'm going to put a poll up and I want y'all to let me know what you think. Does the black community have a branding problem? And I'll get into what I mean by branding problem. Um, does the black community have a branding problem? All right, so let's get this up here. Boom. All right, tripod. Okay, so branding. Let's talk about branding real quick. In business, branding is essentially how you want the marketplace to see your business, how you connect with your audience, right? So Apple, their brand is centered around being innovative, being the pretty much the cool kids on the block, the people that or the company that pushes creativity, right? Tesla, the same thing. Innovation, um, being at the forefront. That's their brand. When we think about Waffle House, right? And I'm just picking Waffle House because I see them online a lot. When we think about Waffle House, to me, their brand is centered around hood fights where people go, videos where people go there and they're open 24 hours a day, and you don't know what you're gonna get. This is a wild place, right? That's Waffle House brand. And um, let's think of some other companies. McDonald's, what is their brand? Their brand is centered around here you can get some cheap food. You can get some cheap food. You can get 20 McNuggets for this price. That's their brand. Their brand is, the kids love it here. They got the clown, they got all that stuff, right? So the brand is pretty much how you want to be seen in the marketplace. And I pose this question to the black community. How do we want to be seen in the marketplace? And when I say marketplace, I'm talking about like when we go to the grocery store, when we go apply for jobs, when we go apply for business loans, when we are just walking around, when we have interactions with the cops, when we are pretty much just living our everyday lives as black individuals, but as the black community as well. How do we want to? It says marketplace and black community should not be in the same sentence, dog. I disagree. I think that the world is a marketplace. I think when you step outside your home, that you're walking into sort of a marketplace. People are making decisions about you. Same thing when you go through the grocery store. You're making decisions about products in the grocery store based on their branding, based on the company, based on all of these factors. And I think the world is making decisions about you when you step out into the marketplace. And I'm going to get into some examples of what I mean, because I do believe the world is a marketplace. I do believe that how the black community is perceived, how black individuals are perceived, have to do with how we're presented to the broader society and how you present yourself to the broader society. So getting into what I want to talk about specifically, a personal experience, and this is what brought this conversation up. Um, so I'll get into what is the broader society. Uh, when I say what is the broader society, I'm talking about pretty much things outside of you. You going and applying for a job, you going to the grocery store, you going and pretty much doing things that have to do with you not being in your home. So you interacting with broader society, not just white people, but black people as well, uh, Latinos, Hispanics, just society in general. So this got brought up to me because uh, yeah, so just being in public, pretty much just being in public, or just being at your job, or outside of your home. So this got brought up to me last night because my wife, she likes to go to the park with the kids. I go as well sometimes, but she goes during the day because I'm working and things like that. And just like to ask her questions like, okay, what was going on? Anything crazy happen? How are the kids? Blah, blah, blah. And, sometimes she'll FaceTime me, we'll talk. I would speak to her, or she'd be telling me these stories. It'd mainly be she was chilling with a white parent, right? White parents. Or she'd talk about this conversation, and I'd be like, well, was this, were they white? Were they black? I ask those questions. I know some people may seem like, well, why does it matter? But I ask those questions because I just like to study society, and I like to look at things from a critical perspective. So I'm asking like, okay, you know, were they white? Are they black? What's going on? Because we're also thinking about homeschooling our children. So it's mainly white parents that she is telling these stories about. So I'm asking like, why is that? Like, how come you're not talking to any of the black parents? How come you're not doing this? And she says she does talk to the black parents. She tries to talk to the black parents, but here's what she notices, right? When she's at this park, right? When she goes to this park, the black parents are out there cussing at their children in front of the other children. They are smelling like weed at the park. And then when there's individual conversations about, like, here's what I feed my kids. They're talking about feeding their kid. The black parents are talking about feeding their kids. All this unhealthy stuff. They're uh, she noticed that a lot of the black children were overweight versus other groups of children, um, and that whenever she would try to express like, hey, eating foods that are high in salt or high in sugar, high in fat, maybe like some of these juices, some of these things, she would get kind of like ostracized by the black parents. But she's able to have those conversations with the Hispanic parents, the white parents. She said these other parents that are not black, they're bringing fruits and vegetables as snacks. They're bringing these other things. And, the way that they're interacting with their children at the park is a lot different than the way the black children are acting at the park. She tells a story about how there was a black parent. I think I was there. I just wasn't in the vicinity, but there was a situation where there was a black parent who was yelling at their child and cussing, and there was another parent that kind of stepped in and was like, yo, they're just a kid, you don't have to talk like that. And then they start cussing at that parent. All right, so I'm just giving you the background on how this conversation came up, so you don't think I just pulled it out of thin air, right? This got me thinking about how we're perceived as a group of people in public. Because it's one thing when white people will come out and they'll say something about black people, because then it's just like, oh, they're being racist, or they're trying to lift their group of people up above our people. But there's a deeper conversation that needs to be had about how do black people see other black people in public? How do we see each other in public? Because I can tell you, if I'm trying to teach my child how to eat healthy, or I'm trying to teach my child how to deal with conflict and things like that, and we're at the park, and when we're at the park, they see other black people acting a fool. They see other, like, they only see other black people cussing at their child, cussing their child out, yelling at them. It's like, and I'm not exaggerating. This is not a shot at my people, right? When I do go to the park, there is a sense of, why is it always us? Why is it always us doing this? Because as a parent, right, it's different with me. If I go somewhere and it smells like weed, or people are doing something, causing mayhem, I just mind my business and I'm good, right? I'm a grown man. I've seen it before. But when you have your children in certain spaces and people are doing stuff, it's like, man, why is it always us? Why can't we come to the park and it not smell like weed? Why are y'all sitting over here on this bench, on this table or whatever, smoking black and milds at a children's park? Why are we doing this? Why? Why do you have your speaker out with music playing, talking about pussy and dick and fucking and all this stuff. We at a children's park. This isn't me making this up. This is what happens when we go to these parks. Why is it always us? That's what questions I have. Just like when we see videos of police shootings, and we're like, why is it always us? Why are we always the ones getting shot? Which is not true. More white people get killed by cops than black people, and I think it's under 250 black people total that got killed last year by the cops. But that's a side note, right? We see those videos and we're like, why is it always us? Why is it always us? I be thinking the same thing when I go out in public and I see black people acting a fool. Now I know my community, black people, are gonna get on me and say, well, I see white people acting a fool in public. I see Hispanic people acting a fool in public. I see that. You know what? That's true. They act a fool in public as well. But I notice, just my personal experience, not because I'm looking for it, I notice that more than not, it's us. That's just me being honest. I notice more than not, it's us. When I go to the park, I don't see other groups of people acting like this, right? And I'm not talking about an area where it's predominantly one group, right? Like if you live in an area where it's predominantly Hispanic, you're probably gonna go to the park and see that if it's predominantly that, just because that's who's there. But the area we're in, it's a diverse group of people. Like you have everybody. You have Hispanics, you have blacks, you have whites. There's everybody at that park. You can see them. You have Middle Easterns, Muslims, Christians, all of that. You can see it, right? And it's always us. So this brings me to, do we have a branding problem? Do we have a branding problem? Because I want to extrapolate on that. If let's say, I'm black, right? I'm black, obviously. So when I see these things and I've studied these issues, I can kind of put some meaning behind it and put some understanding behind it, and not, I guess, form these judgments about other black people based on what I'm seeing here. But I can understand, and this is just me being real because I do it, right? I can understand why, if your limited interaction with black people is maybe you go to the park and you're seeing this, or maybe you go somewhere and you're seeing this behavior, I can understand why you may start to form certain thoughts or opinions about people. Okay, so we got a comment. Someone said, it can be embarrassing to see some black people act a certain way in public, but it doesn't mean all black people are that way. It depends on the neighborhood as well. I agree, which is interesting because there's a different park that we go to. There's a different area that we go to, and it's predominantly black. And this is just a fact of this area. It's higher income, right? It's higher income. And when we first got to this neighborhood, it was a breath of fresh air. It was a breath of fresh air because these were black people that were doing well for themselves, outside riding bikes. Let me tell you how important that was for me to see. Because where I grew up, I didn't see that, right? I didn't see black people just outside riding bikes, exercising. I never saw that. So when I moved to this neighborhood, and it was predominantly black, most of the people were doing well for themselves. There were no pawn shops around. It was not in the hood. This was a good area. Just regular black people outside exercising and in a nice area. Great amenities in the area, everything, right? That was important for me to see because I had not seen that before. I hadn't seen it. It was almost weird for me to see like just regular black people, just a father and son and mom. They're just outside and they're riding bikes, and there's nothing crazy going around. The cops aren't rolling by. There's no ambulances pulling up getting nobody. This is a nice area, right? And so if you're around that, you're gonna have a different perception of black people. There's gonna be a different branding of black people that are going on your mind if you're only exposed to that. So yeah, you're completely right when you say that. Like it definitely depends on the neighborhood. But more times than not, when I'm just going, and when I'm going to where everyone is, right? Because this was a black area, black neighborhood, upper middle middle class neighborhood, right? But when I go to places where it's not just black people, when it's like you're getting everyone, just regular people, not a hyper segregated group of black people that are doing well for themselves, but just everyone. Because at this park, there's people that are the black people that are doing good for themselves. There's white people that are doing good for themselves, but there's also black people that are not as doing as well for themselves, or not as educated, or not as this and not as that, right? So when I see everyone coming together, we always stand out for some reason. We always stand out, and not in a good way. Not in a good way. Um, we got another comment. We have to stop looking at only color, though. It goes deeper than that. This is an economic issue. Those who are more financially secure stress less and aren't doing drugs or acting aggressive. So I don't necessarily think that it's just centered around income. I think it's centered around culture as well, because there's poor white people at that park too. I know it. I see it. But it's not being expressed in that way. There's poor Muslims there. There's poor Asian people there. And I don't even want to say poor, because I don't even believe that the people there that are acting like that are just poor, that's the thing, right? Because some of them are pulling up in nice cars, which I get, that doesn't mean you have money, because we all know you can qualify for a car even if you're broke in some cases. But I think it extends beyond just income. I think it's culture. I think that, you get used to behaving a certain way. And that when you step out in the public sphere, it's like, I don't care about these people. Like that's something that is ingrained in the black community, that when you step out in public, I don't give a damn about these people. I'll get loud if I want to. Fuck they gonna do. Right? That's something that is ingrained in the culture. I grew up like that, right? That's there's he said their mindset is poo. Those who know better do better. I agree. But this is why I say I think that the black community has a branding problem, because I don't think as a culture we're cognizant, or that we care what other groups of people think about us when we're in public. I think we actually, to a certain degree, want to be seen as, we don't care. We're willing to set shit off right now. We're willing to do whatever we want. Like, I think that there's that type of mentality. But I want to dive deeper into the branding, right? I want to dive deeper into that, because that's what I want to focus on. And I want to say thank you to everyone that's on the live stream. If you could, real quick, hit that like button, just show some support. And if you are not subscribed to the channel, hit that subscribe button. We've got a lot of great content. But back to the branding, right? When we're talking about branding, understand that branding is decided by other people, right? And I'll use an example just to show how branding is kind of like, what's it called? It's a slippery slope, right? Because there's grocery stores that I go into, right, where 90 to 95% of the time, when you go to the fresh produce section, you're not going to see mold on the produce. You're not going to see any of that stuff. You can go in there and confidently pick out the produce, right? But when I go to this grocery store, right, and there's mold on the produce, automatically in my mind I start to think, this store is ass, man. Look at this. Even though everything else around it could be good. Everything else around it could be good. If I see some mold, or I see something in the produce section that's off, or whatever, it starts to, man, see, I knew I should have went to this other place. Man, see, this is why I shouldn't be shopping here, right? Even though everything else could be great. And I have to check myself on that, because I understand nothing's going to be perfect. Nothing's going to be perfect. But I'm just speaking to what happens in the human mind when it comes to branding. When it comes to branding, right? Like, there are some, I used to wonder this. There's some Walmarts that you go to, right, where it's shit when you walk in. Let's be real. It's crappy. It's disgusting. You walk in, the avocados beat up. The tomatoes look like a nigga done punched them in their fucking face, right? It's crazy. Then if you go to a different Walmart in a different area, maybe a higher income, this you wouldn't even know it was Walmart if you didn't read the sign outside. The fruits and vegetables stacked real nice. The people at the front, they greet you with a smile you ain't never seen before. The aisles are clean. They're it's a different vibe, right? It's a completely different vibe. Why? Because they understand that if they want these customers in this area, they have to brand this Walmart a different way. Right? They can't be hassling you they can't be hassling you when you're leaving the grocery store asking for no receipt, checking your stuff. Why? Because in this area that may be seen as insulting. That may be seen as, okay, well, we're not going to come here anymore because we don't like the brand of this store. So that's the only point that I'm making. Someone said, I don't brand people, dog. I just see people as people. It's okay. How is that true? But that's the branding of white folks here. So when I say, again, when I say branding, I'm specifically just relating to, like, when you go to the grocery store or you go wherever to buy a product, there's a certain way that you view that product based off of certain things. What does the packaging look like? What if you went to buy a Reese's Pieces and it was misspelled correctly? One of them said this and one of them said that. Or even the Jordans, right? We've all seen fake Jordans where the hangman is a little tilted or it looks a little off, whatever. We get hell for that, right? If we buy those. That's what I'm talking about. How something is perceived. How something is perceived. That's simply what branding is. How something is perceived, but also how someone feels about something. Right? That's why I'm using branding. That's why I'm using branding. But Sean brings up an interesting point. He said, but that's the branding of white folks here. Part of it is, I'm not going to lie, part of it is these are ideas that white people have put out about black people. Part of it is, let's be real. Part of it is. But then there's another part of it where you can't ignore your eyes. The part of it that is white people is the stuff the exaggerated stuff, right? That we walking around with gold teeth and that we all be walking around hood and stuff like that. That's part of it, right? But then there's the real part of it. Like when I'm out in public and I'm seeing this happen in front of me, that's not white people. Part of my eyes might be white, but that's not white people. That's us. That's us doing that. That's us at the park smelling like weed in front of children. That's us saying nigga and bitch and playing Lil Uzi in front of children. Not just our children, but other people's children. Why would I want to go be around that if I'm a parent and I don't want my kid hearing about wops, wet ass pussies? Why would I want to be around that? What am I going to think? Especially if you go time and time again and it's always them doing it. What do you think? And my point is, if that is a limited interaction that you have with a group of people, if that's what you have, where does that lead in other parts of life? If you're a mom, you're a white mom and you're going to the park and you're always noticing that it's us, that it's black people acting a fool when you go to the park, and your husband, who's in a powerful position, comes home and asks you how the park was, and that white wife is like, man, I was at the park, it was crazy. It was crazy. You know, this and that happened. Just like the Kendrick Lamar and Drake stuff going on right now. That's what people are talking about because that's what gets attention, right? People are going to talk about what gets attention and what stands out to them. And that can stand out. If you're at the park and someone smells like weed, or a group of people smell like weed, or they bust out a speaker and they throw on some rap songs where they're talking about this, that, and the third in front of children, that stands out. I don't think no one goes to the park to talk down on us. I think we just stand out in a negative way in some of these instances. Let me read some comments. Go make an alt and do it yourself. Be a big boy. You're going to help a brother out here. We all have judgments against them. The Latin people all live 8 to a household. See, um, I think stereotypes are real, and I think they can be damaging. Right here, I'm talking about a personal experience, and I'm just posing a question, right? If someone has a limited perspective or a limited amount of exposure to a certain thing, and this is what they see, this is all they see when they go around us, what are they supposed to think? I know what I would think, right? I know what I did think. Let's be real. I had a limited exposure to white people when I grew up. I had a limited exposure to white people when I grew up, and I had certain ideas about white people. I had certain ideas about cops because I had a limited exposure. I saw this video. I saw this one thing, right? And I had a limited exposure. And it wasn't until I got around them more that I was able to see certain things, right? And then it changed a little bit. What I'm saying here to you is, I have not had a limited exposure to black people. I grew up around black people my whole life. And this isn't to talk down on us. This is just to bring awareness to. It's to say, how are we viewed by other people and ourselves? What is our brand? What is our brand in the world? When people think of black people, what do they think and why? What do they think and why? That's the important thing for me. What do they think and why? Because for me, and this is just me being real, I think that we need to work on our brand as a people. I do think we need to care. I do think it's important. I do think that we need to adopt a mindset that says we want to be looked at in a certain way, because then when we come to the political forefront, we can make demands. We can negotiate properly. When things are happening with black women and black men, we can be taken seriously. But when your brand is shitty, no one takes you seriously. No one takes you seriously, right? And I think that's just human nature. I think fundamentally, most things come down to branding. How are you positioning yourself amongst the competition? How are you positioning yourself amongst other things? And how are we positioning ourselves? If it's always us, what are we supposed to think as people? Like I say this all the time, raising children is scary. I don't want my children inundated with the current black culture. And I'm not talking about like teaching history and things like that. I'm just talking about the mindset around education, for example. I can't tell you how many black people I know that got money and their children can't read. Their children can't spell. Their children can't do math. Education isn't prioritized in our community. So for me, it's like raising children. How do you balance that? How do you balance that? How do you balance the fact that if you're a black parent and you really want black people to, you really want to be involved in the community, you want your children around other black people, you want your children to have black friends, but you understand that that black household probably isn't going to value education. That black household probably is not going to be valuing eating healthy and things like that. So how do I send my kids over there? All right, homeschooling. Sean said in the comment section, homeschooling. Right, that's what we're gearing towards. Homeschooling. So let me read this poll. So I asked, I put up a poll, does the black community have a branding problem? 43% said yes, 57% said no. So let's talk about it. So all right. So 43% said yes, 57%, or let me see. Yeah, I think 57%. 43% say yes, 57% say no. So more people think that we don't have a branding problem than do based on the 7 votes. Okay, so I put in the comment section, how do you see black people when you go out in public, right? For the most part, how are we perceived, good or bad, for the most part, good or bad? Because literally just people. Okay, so we can't look at we can't look at things for what they are. Then I guess they're literally just people. So we can't notice certain things. There's nothing distinct. There's no culture. There's no behaviors. There's no nothing. They're just people. Okay, that's easy to say if you're not trying to be conscious about it. If you're not looking for those things, you may not notice those things. But if you are looking at those things and those things are important to you, uh, then yeah, we get seen bad. I get seen bad. And I want to be clear here, right? I want to be super crystal clear here. I'm not talking about the racist people that just don't like black people when we go out. I'm just talking about someone's minding their business on a regular Thursday, Friday. They're minding their business, and then they just decide like, hey, let me just look around and pay attention to things. There's all these groups of people here. Who's acting a fool right now? And then they pay attention. It's probably gonna be us. I'm just being real. It's probably gonna be us. He said, people think I'm always high. See? Stereotype. And this is what I'm talking about though. I think part of how we present ourselves in public contributes to why people think negatively about black individuals. So not all, not all, but I think a certain percentage of it is, right? I think part of it is how are we carrying ourselves? Because I'm sure I get looked at a certain way because of certain things about me. I used to have locks. I'm sure that because we see a bunch of rappers talking about guns and shooting people and stuff, and they happen to have locks, that I got grouped in with those people. Fine. I can understand though why that's the case. I can understand that. I'm not gonna be naive to it. Someone said, you perceive blacks based on the negative. You are ignoring the good. I'm not ignoring the good. I'm just having a conversation about branding. I'm not ignoring the good. I think the black community has done a lot of good in certain areas. I love black people. I'm just talking about branding. How are we perceived by other groups of people, and how are we perceived as black people when we go out, right? Chris Rock had a joke in one of his stand-up comedies. He was talking about Al Qaeda or whatever, and he was talking about, I'm not scared of Al Qaeda. I'm scared of Al Cracker, right? And then he also went on to say, when I go to the ATM, I don't have a gun because of Al Qaeda or whatever. Or white people say I have a gun because of niggas. And this is I think an important part, because I don't think a lot of people realize that well-meaning black people, we also understand that when we go out, it's probably going to be other black people that brutalize us, that expose us to violence, that victimize us, if you will. It's probably going to be other black people. That's just a fact. That's just a fact, right? And so that's a deeper conversation for another time. My main point here is, if we want to move forward as the black community, we have to work on our branding. We're not taken seriously now. We're not taken seriously, and when we're presenting ourselves in public in a certain way, those conversations and those experiences, they go back and they get spread amongst other people, including our own. So if you're valuing, okay, so what are you gonna do about it? I'm on here having a conversation about it, and when I get in the position to, there are certain things that I would be able to do from a financial perspective, and other things. But I'm having a conversation about it. So I'm not out here claiming that I'm doing anything about it. I can represent myself in a certain way when I go out in public. Um, can the host even see? John, I can see your comments. They're just coming in so fast. Survival chick, 2 minutes of your time and you refuse to help me. Sean, you blatantly ignored me in here, but not one person has been willing to help a brother out in here. That is a problem. I'm not sure what you mean by helping out, helping someone out. But John's being annoying. Don't acknowledge him, dog. All right, bet. So I didn't know. But moving forward, the main point that I'm making is, what you can do personally. Just represent yourself with the utmost dignity when you go outside. Understand that other people are watching. Other black people are watching. Here's the thing. It's scary. It's scary because if you, as a person that wants to be involved in the black community, wants my children around black people and stuff like that, it can be scary to think that our culture may not be the best, the best incubator, if you will, for providing my children with a great experience or providing my children with knowledge and things like that. It might not be a great incubator, and that sucks to say. And it's like when I have to start looking at who I want my children, who I realistically want my children to hang around with, I'm thinking, at the top of the list for me is like Asian children, right? Asian children, because not because I like Asian people more, or I dislike black people, but because I see from an educational perspective, their families value education. They value certain things that I just happen to value. But when I go to my community, I don't get that. I don't get it. And I'm sure that it's out there and I'll look for it. But if I can't find it, what am I supposed to do? Deprive my children of certain experiences? Tell my children, yeah, just go hang around them because they're black, and then they get tainted by these other things that I'm not teaching them that are just present in our culture? I'm not gonna do it. I'm not gonna do it. So I just it's a strange feeling because you want a healthy balance of being critical, but at a certain perspective, especially when you're talking about your children, you also don't want to put them in a compromising position. And that's what I feel like sometimes when I think about, like, wow, if I inundate my child with how black culture is right now, I don't think they're gonna get good results. He said, I'm all for you wanting a better chance for you and your kids to have a better connection with your community. But again, it's all about morals. If you want something better, find the better. Right, and I agree. You have to find the better. You have to find the better. And sometimes the better may not be within the black community. And John is saying Zane is a white boy. Even if he is, right, I think there's validity to what he's saying. There's validity to what he's saying because I had to find better. I grew up in a certain environment, and when I wanted better, I couldn't lean on the people that I was around to show me better or to do better, because that's just not where they were at. I had to go outside of that to get it. Unfortunately, because it can be lonely. It can be lonely, and it can be sad at times because the people you grew up with and the people that you love and care about, they're operating at a certain level, not because they're bad people, but that's just where they're at. And if you don't want to operate at that level, you kind of have to pick and choose. And sometimes I feel like that with the black community, where it's like, man, if only we could be doing it, then it would be just so much easier. But it's not like that. When we try to have conversations, it's like, oh, you're acting white now. You're co-op. You're an agent. That's what I think. You're preaching all love. Resolution for what you're preaching. And Craig can suck, and unfortunately I can't relate to your past, but I'm just giving you the idea for the best solution for what you're preaching, dog. All love. All right, now, Zane, I appreciate the input. I don't know if you're white or black. And to me, it doesn't matter at this point because you're just giving a perspective, and that's fine. I want to end with this. Right? In no way, shape, or form am I talking down on the black community. I'm just talking about observations that I've made, observations uh, that are true, that are real, that I don't want to be true. I don't want to go out in public and for it to be uh, a negative experience. I don't want to go out in public and think, why is it always us? I don't go looking for that. I don't go looking for that to be the outcome. That's just what it is when I go out, and that sucks to say. But moving forward, I think if we as a community worked on our branding, we'd get further. As an individual, you can see this. As an individual, if you work on your personal branding and you work on how you present yourself, how you articulate your ideas, how you present certain things, you'll get ahead, right? Perfect example. We had pest control or whatever, not pest control, but like we had like Terminex come out and spray every 3 months or whatever. And my wife, she noticed a wasp nest or whatever. And the Terminex guy didn't notice it, but she was telling him, like, there's a wasp nest. But she wasn't able to, she didn't, she's not a confrontational person, right? So he was like, nah, I got them all. I got them all. He was adamant, nah, I got them all. And she sees it still though. Now I didn't see it. I'm just in my office and she comes to me and I was like, did they take care of everything? And she's like, well, I still see one, but he's saying he got them all. And I was like, did you show him where it's at? Did you do that? She was like, nah. She was like, he's saying he got them all. I said, well, just go up to him and just point to what you're talking to and say, if you got them all, what is that? Right? What is that? She did that and his whole demeanor changed. It went from, I got them all, I'm confident, I got them all, blah, 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 to, oh, wow, I didn't even see that, blah, blah, blah. Here's what I'm saying, right? Branding has to do with that, because if you're the type of person where you're not going to speak up and maybe you're not confrontational, people can sense that on you. They can tell by having a conversation. You're branding yourself as a person that's just going to let me say whatever I want to say and roll with it. But if you brand yourself as like a very confident person, assertive person, you're able to have certain conversations. You're able to get things that you otherwise wouldn't have gotten, just because of how you present yourself, just because of how you communicate and things like that. And that's the only point that I'm making, is personal branding will change your life, and as a community, changing the way we brand ourselves will change your life. So let's see what Sean said. For our branding to change, we need a media change. I agree. We need media that we control to a large degree. And it's a deep conversation because, again, on CNN, we're branded as victims. On Fox, we're branded as criminals in a lot of cases. In other places, we're branded as other things. I'm not talking about that. Those are money-making machines. This is why I try to stick to things that I personally experience, and maybe the data, right? The data, that's not just CNN or one of these media outlets, because I've done extensive research on these. I know about how we're perceived in movies. I know the type of roles that we're casted and all that stuff. Horrible, right? Even though we contribute to it. Another conversation. But we definitely need a media change. We definitely need to control the media, and we have to stop pretending that everything is just racism no matter what. There are legitimate concerns here when we're branding ourselves a certain way. Some of it's racism. I'll acknowledge that. Some of it is just some people aren't going to like black people. But some of it is not that. And if we can do something about the things that we can control, I think that's a better outcome. But I do got to dip out. If you're in the chat right now, or you're watching this video, hit that like button real quick. Hit that subscribe button. Turn the bell notification on so that you can get all the newest content. Go check out some of my content now. I'm dropping multiple times a week. Just putting out content, putting the work in. Support the channel, and I'll see y'all next time. I appreciate it.